Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Paige. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Magic Hour. I'm your host, Taylor Paige. Our producer, Claire, couldn't be with us today, but we have two amazing guests. Before I get into their introduction, I just wanted to share about an experience I had with my husband that was really special. So we went to go see Tyler Henry live, which was amazing. Especially if you're into mediumship. And as a medium, I had a really interesting experience watching him. So I don't always see auras, but sometimes I do. I see them a lot in my readings, but what I mean is outside of that container, I don't always see auras. And every time I have, it's been a really significant and meaningful experience. So when I was watching Tyler, as he was in his natural state, he had this sort of indigo light around him. And as he was in the process of looking for who he was going to connect with, I saw his aura expanding and pulsing out. And here was the cool part. So then he would connect with a soul and a spirit on the other side. And in the spiritualist world, it's called blending. So you connect with somebody and you start to blend with their energy to get a clear link with them so that you can bring in the evidence that they want to share. And so what was so cool was I saw his energy pulsing out, this indigo light, and then it would draw in like a wave coming back into the ocean. It would draw in so tightly to him, and I could actually see, and the color would change when he drew it in, and I could actually see him forming a link. It was honestly amazing, and he had such powerful energy. And what was so special about the experience for me was my husband's takeaway, because my husband has always been really supportive of me with my angel readings, astrology, all of that. He's been so supportive. And with mediumship, I went to Arthur Findlay College last September 2023, and that was a very expansive, eye-opening, just it cracked me wide open, that experience. And sometimes we forget that us on this spiritual path have these amazing, incredible experiences that our partners aren't there to witness and aren't having themselves. And it was so healing. It's not that my husband isn't supportive of my mediumship. It's just that he hasn't been exposed to it as long and didn't know how to talk about it. And objectively, it is a very heavy topic if you're not lit up with the joy of doing it, like I am. So it's so exciting for me to connect with everyone. So that being said, we went to Tyler Henry's show and we were so touched. There was the cutest man sitting next to us who was just sitting there silently, calmly, with his hands folded on his lap, and resting on his stomach was a picture of his dad who had passed. And it was as if he was just sitting in this crowd saying to himself, oh, well, if my dad comes through, that's cool. If not, I'm just watching the show with my dad. And we were both so touched by his presence. And of course, Tyler was amazing and made amazing connections. And everybody who really needed one, I mean, there was at least a postcard, which you'll know from the podcast. If you've listened, I do Sitting with Spirit at the end where I connect to, different loved ones in spirit that have messages for the collective. And of course, not everybody's going to get that specific connection, but there will be winks from your loved one in spirit, which is called a postcard. And sometimes what also happens is souls with similar identifiers link together to reach more people. And that actually even happened in Tyler's show, which was really interesting, where there were two young boys with the same name who were the same age who died of the same thing. And you know that they met up on the other side, like, let's form an alliance to reach our loved ones so that they can all get the message instead of just one group. And I firmly believe that's what's happening on the podcast too, because when I connect to different spirits at the end, many of you email me and say, that was my mom, that was my dad, that was my grandma, whatever. And in reality, I think it's a group of spirits that find and blend a lot of evidence that people, since this is a platform where multiple people listen, will recognize. So if you know that it's not your person 100%, but you can recognize a lot of the info, that is 100% intentional, and it's flaring up some sort of resonance in you for a reason. So going back, my husband watched the show. He was really impressed. It was amazing to share that experience with him. It was amazing that he was open and wanted to go. And we were both very touched by the evening. And the best part of the evening for me was we were walking out of the theater and my husband just looked at me and said, "You were born to do this, my love. You were born to do this work." And it just touched me so much because he was on the fence about mediumship. I mean, he supported it. He literally sent me to Arthur Findlay College as his Christmas gift to me. So he's always been supportive, but he didn't know what to make of it. And when he saw how it impacted people, when he saw the grievers that got such peace from hearing from their loved ones on the other side, it cracked something open in him. And so this is to say, if you're on a spiritual path and you feel like your partner doesn't quite understand, just remember that your partner hasn't always had the same aha moments that you have on your path. And if they're open-minded and supportive, those are the prerequisites: kind, open-hearted, open-minded. But if you can include them and they're open and feel comfortable in that environment to see some of the amazing things that you're seeing, it will only help them understand you more and can make you feel even closer. So that was an amazing experience in a few different ways. Just his relating a lot to his story, seeing the way he was helping people, watching the way his energy would go out, expand, and contract with a link was really cool, and seeing the people that he helped. So that was just an amazing experience. And I know I said I would talk about it on the podcast, so I just wanted to get that out there a little bit. And sometimes I feel like on the pod, I jump into the interview and I go so fast. My Aries rising, all the fire in my chart can just be like bam, bada boom. And I'm like, no, let's ease in a little bit. So now let's get to our beautiful guests who are joining me today to have a deeper conversation about women's health, mind, body, soul, bringing ritual and magic back into the healing process. And without further ado, we have Seraphina Capranos, who is a clinical herbalist, homeopath, and initiated priestess with a practice spanning over 2 decades. As well as being a deeply engaging teacher and speaker, she has a clinical practice on an island in the Salish Sea. Her unique blend of gifts straddle the vast worlds of plant medicine, homeopathy, and ritual and ceremonial magic. She is a sought-after international teacher who has taught thousands of students since 2008. She is the CEO and founder of the Center for the Sacred Arts. Then we also have Dr. Karley Denoon on. Karley has over a decade of experience providing primary care as a naturopathic doctor. Her career consists of founding and directing a multidisciplinary clinic deep in the Rocky Mountains of British Columbia, contributing to the development of medical screening programs at Aeon Future Health, Canada's first biohacking facility, and co-founding the Center for Sacred Arts. Beyond the companies she has started to run and her own clinical practice, Karley has a deep commitment to empowering adolescent girls and young women, as evidenced by her role on the board of the Arnica Foundation. What sets Karley apart is her multifactorial approach to health, recognizing that well-being extends beyond the conventional medical and even wellness paradigm. Through the support of many mentors who helped open Karley's mind early in her career, she delved into a deeper understanding of health, tapping into her inner wisdom through the wise woman archetype. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did having it. Welcome back to Magic Hour, everyone. I'm here with the beautiful Seraphina and Dr. Karley Denoon. I would love to know your big three. That is how we start off with every guest here on Magic Hour.
So I am a Taurus sun, a Virgo moon, and an Aquarius rising.
Ooh, I love that. All the earth vibes. I definitely felt like there was some Taurus or Virgo between the two of you because that's such healing energy. And what about you, Dr. Karley?
Well, all that I know is that I am an Aries and Seraphina coaches me through the rest. So I think I'm sun in Aries and moon, what is it, in Leo?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm rising in
Libra.
So she holds me accountable to the astrology.
So you're the fire and you're the earth.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. I love that. But then you both meet in the middle with a little air. And so the second thing I like to ask all of the guests is, because everybody's intuition shows up differently, I like to get everybody's answer on what that feels like or looks like for everybody, so everyone listening can expand their idea of what that intuitive connection might look like. So whoever wants to go first, how does your intuition show up for you?
So I'll take that first, Taylor. I think my intuition shows up for me in sort of a saying that I use, saying I'm in my boots. So feeling as though I'm grounded, I'm present, and I'm available for my own intuition to even speak to me. And it shows up as a really deep, wise knowing. Sometimes Seraphina and I throw back the phrase, having a little bit of a touch of the knowing. And that doesn't mean some sort of mystical connection. It really means a touch of our own knowing, which is so deeply rooted where we meet, which is, on our earth-based practices. So my intuition is a deep voice inside that I have access to when I'm in my boots.
I love that. And I love just knowing what I know about your astrology is the fire wants to go so fast and be impulsive and figure things out right away. And what you're describing as your intuitive connection is slower, more grounded, connected to something much deeper inside of you. So I feel like that's really a symbiotic explanation with the big three that you just told me. And I love that. And Seraphina, what about you?
I would say that intuition for me is like this quiet little voice, and I have to slow down, and I have to slow down my nervous system even for a moment to get deeper into my body and out of my head. And it's like a felt sense for me where I just know. It's like I know in my bones, I know in my gut when something is a yes or a no, or move in this direction but not that direction. So it's not like I hear a voice, but it's like a felt voice deep in the body. And how I often describe it is intuition is like this downward movement. It has a downward grounding movement. Even if I'm afraid or anxious of what the truth might be, there's still this quiet calm even behind that. Whereas when it's not intuition and it's fear or anxiety that's leading the charge, there's like an upward movement and I almost can't feel my body. And the fear and the anxiety takes off. Intuition is connected to the earth for me, and the earth meaning our flesh, our body, because our body is made of the earth.
What a beautiful answer. I love that so much. And I know as a Taurus, you'll resonate with this. I always say our body is our biggest divining tool. So it's our biggest vessel to connect with spirit. And there's such a connection between a regulated nervous system and ability to sit in the in-between and the unknown and intuitive connection so that we're not filling in the blanks with fear. And I love that visual of a spiral downwards. For some reason, I almost want to say a spiral home instead of out of our body into the mental realms, disassociating, thinking about other things. And I think it's beautiful too. And we're going to get into so many amazing things with you guys, but there's everything we need for our health is down. Everything we need for our health, mind, body, soul is available through nature in that bringing our consciousness to the land, to the soil, to where our feet sit. And I love how both of you have that connection with the earth element, grounding, slowing down, connecting, and sounds like you both have that claircognizance connection as well, which is that psychic knowing, just knowing things, but how that shows up for you sounds a little different. So that's really beautiful. So there's so many directions I want to go with you guys. I was doing research for my Healing the Witch Wound workshop, and I came across a statistic that said 80% of chronic illnesses in the United States are women. And I find chronic illness as an invitation to heal the divine feminine. I myself have struggled with PCOS and a couple other things, and we live in a society that's so geared towards the male hormone system and everything like that, that I find chronic illness forces a lot of people, especially women, to slow down, to tend to their health. And I'm wondering if either of you had that invitation yourself, or what the path was that led you here to this awareness of holistic medicine.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that to start, Taylor. I mean, I think as women, you may know the psychologist Gabor Mate, who says, that it's all going to show up in our body. And as women, as a physician, I know that women suffer from autoimmune conditions at a much higher rate than men. So we do internalize, and things are going to show up in our tissues. And I think both Seraphina and I, as clinical practitioners, Seraphina as a herbalist and master homeopath, and me as a physician and naturopathic doctor, we see that on the daily in our clinical practices, which is what has enabled us to build this program, is because we built this program that we want to share with you based on what we saw in our clinic and how we saw women's bodies and psyches responding to what was going on for them. And so, yes, disease does show up in the body. And sadly, probably because of what is available for women and the history of medicine and women, the fact that it wasn't until 20 years ago that we actually had accurate statistics on half the medications that we give to women, on how they were going to work in women's bodies, and other variables like that. Yes, women, I think, do suffer, and we've been subject to a lot of the bikini medicine. So unless we're having a child, or it's what would fit under a bikini, then everything else is the same as a man, which we know is not the truth, because we're living and bathing in this slew of hormones that responds and reacts differently than the male body. So I would say that 100% I see women coming into clinic with more autoimmune disease than necessarily chronic disease. Chronic disease just means you didn't catch it early enough, in my opinion, or it's not being managed properly down the line. And I would hate to say that chronic disease was ever anybody's fault. I don't believe that that's true. I don't believe that there's a big wound that you need to heal in your psyche, or else you're going to have chronic disease. I really don't believe in that. But I do resonate with you saying that it does give us an opportunity to look at how our physiology is responding to our lives. And what, like you opened the podcast with, how our nervous systems are even responding, because in that dysregulated nervous system, you're never going to be in parasympathetic where the healing happens, right? So I would say that yes, women definitely experience, and statistically it's true, a lot more autoimmune disease. And I do think that chronic disease, when you are given the resources, or you have the resources to reflect, definitely is a gift to look at the feminine wound and maybe the witch wound, or whatever that is.
Absolutely. And I like the clarification of, we're not putting blame on anyone who's sick. I think that is something in like the spiritual industry that can be really toxic, with that idea of like, your thoughts are the reason you have this. I definitely don't subscribe to that. But what I mean by an invitation to heal the divine feminine is that we're participating in a society that's not designed for us, and that we've been excluded from and pushed out from creating the structures. So thank you for that opportunity to clarify. And I agree so much with what you said. There's almost this feeling that to be in a female body means that we're expected to suffer in some extent. It's almost as if there's this narrative of being in a female body means you hate your body, you expect to suffer, you expect to try to be at war with yourself your entire life. And we're basically told that not loving our body, not feeling good in our body is just the normal part of the female experience. And like you said, Dr. Karley, the history of women not being allowed to go to med school and midwives being persecuted as witches. And there's so many deep things that come along with this. And so Seraphina, I'm wondering how you found your way to this work and if there was anything that was a call for you to heal in yourself.
Yeah, I mean, literally what called me to this was a spinal injury I had as a teenager. And I was 16 when it happened, and it meant that I was in bed for months and months and months in chronic pain and missed a lot of school and couldn't do all the things that my peers were doing, which put me into a depression. I mean, all I wanted to do was go out and be a kid and a young person and party and explore. But instead I was in bed having to manage chronic pain. And what that did, I can look back now and see all the gifts that came with that. And one of the many things that came was I had the opportunity to dive into books. This is pre-internet, so I was diving into these books about healing and pouring myself into these old herbal texts by Hildegard von Bingen, written 500 years ago. And I ate it up. I loved it. And it woke up something in me that felt ancient and like it had always been there. I could feel, I could taste, I could smell the way of plants. Now, I grew up in a home where that's primarily what my mom used for healthcare. I didn't see a doctor until I was much older in my life, and I've never been on antibiotics, not because my parents were against them, but because I learned how to read my body and I learned how to cut things off at the pass. But if I ever needed them, I would, of course, use them. But going back to as a young person, I dove into the feminine arts. I joined my first coven when I was a teenager. I was working with the goddess and working with the cycles of the moon all at that age. And in many respects, I felt like it saved my life because I was forced to listen to my intuition. I was forced to understand the nuance of my body. I had nothing else to do but lay in bed and do inner visualizations and explore my organs and my tissues almost in a psychedelic way without any substance as a way to get to understand the subtle body. So all of that, it was around that time, I think I was 16 or 17, where I wrote, because it was just published, this incredible book that I recommend everyone read called Witches, Nurses, and Midwives. And it's a tiny little book that was written as an article by two scholars, and it is the history of witches, nurses, and midwives. And it opened this world where it was like a remembering. Wait a minute, like this deep feeling that I have that we contain this wisdom within. It did exist. It did exist. Like there were women who knew the way of plants, and there were women who knew the way of anatomy and physiology. They were scientists in the way that as that was defined back then. And they were also mystics, and they were seers, and they were witches, and they were nurses, and they were medical doctors, and they were surgeons. And I loved that. That just blew my heart open. It blew my mind open, so that when I did go to university, I was pursuing pre-med, and I was taking medical history, and I was taking ancient civilization classes because I wanted that marriage, that union of the old world and the new. So that's essentially what started me on this path.
You said something in there that is such a little gem for our listeners, which is you learn to cut the illness off at the pass by learning the language of your body. And we're in this society, and this is why I think it's a divine feminine wound, where of course we're expected to show up in the 24-hour male hormone cycle, even though we're a 30-day hormone cycle as women or people who menstruate. So we take melatonin to sleep, we take caffeine to stay awake, we take whatever it is. We're always managing our body, the way our body is speaking to us, and speaking over our body to stay productive and to stay afloat in this society. And so how did you train yourself to listen to your body? Is there anything you can recommend to our listeners to learn their body's language?
Yeah. So I think, again, my story is unique because I was literally in bed and didn't have much else to do. But it is paying attention to the symptoms as they arise. And some people don't feel connected enough to their body to be able to do that. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds great, but I don't really notice anything happening until my body's screaming at me and I'm in an emergency room. So to prepare or to cut that off at the pass, I recommend every day just giving yourself meaningful pauses. It's very unromantic, but a lot of what can become deep, powerful change is in the small, everyday, mundane steps. In my opinion, magic is mundane. It's in the little things. It's going pee when your body says, I need to go pee, not holding your pee for hours until you start getting cramps in your bladder. It's drinking water throughout the day instead of waiting till 6 p.m. going, wait a minute, I've been thirsty all day. So that's what I mean. It's those little paying attention in small ways. And then I'm also a homeopath, and this is where homeopathy comes in, is very helpful. Observing what fears and anxieties you have and get curious about them. Because sometimes when our body is in a panic, what can happen is we can manifest so-called irrational anxieties. Things can come in that maybe you weren't anxious about before. So for example, when I was 25, I developed this wild fear of car crashes. To the point where I was afraid of driving 10 minutes down the road. I would have visions all the time of crashing in a car. I would have dreams of going fast in a car and crashing, and that's what would wake me up. Then I found meditation and my own magical practices that I do, casting circles, grounding, and those fears and those visions would happen less and less. And finally, I asked for a healing dream. And in this one dream that I'll never forget, this dream, literally this character, this shadowy character came into my dream and said, slow down, take a breath, and ask yourself what you need, and you will no longer have these fears. And so I began to do that. Every day I would wake up before I went to work, and I was working really long days back then. I had 2 jobs. I would wake up, I'd look in the mirror, and I would just take 3 breaths and say, okay, what do you need today to feel grounded? And it would be, make sure you eat food that will balance your blood sugar, drink water, and take at least 20 minutes a day of alone time where you're not with anyone else.
Yeah. And I love the synchronicity of how the guide in your dream basically laid a foundation for how your intuition shows up for you, which you said was silence, stillness, connecting to your body. And I love the idea. I always say, turn the routine into ritual. And so I love the idea of looking in the mirror at your body and asking yourself, and the answer will come about in a different way for everyone. But what are 3 things I can do to love myself and my body today? What can I do for you, body? That's so, so beautiful. And can you just tell the listeners what a homeopath is? Because not everybody knows.
Yeah, so a homeopath is different than a naturopathic doctor. Sometimes people get the 2 confused. It's very, very different. Homeopathy is its own system of medicine. It's its own discipline where we essentially use very small, minute doses of mostly plant and mineral substances as a way to nudge the body to self-correct. So we're not using large material doses like herbs or vitamins that are creating like a chemical change in our body. What we're doing is we're giving these essences, very small, dilute, but powerful essences or dilutions as a way to work on the vital force or chi. And by working through the vital force or chi, that nudges the body into self-correction. And when you see a homeopath, we ask you all kinds of questions that seem very random, like what are your fears and anxieties and what are your dreams? And then we customize a remedy, a constitutional remedy that is unlike what your friends may get. So it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is, so to speak, we're matching the right remedy to the person. So it's very customized.
I love that. And that customization is something that so many people feel is missing from medicine. Dr. Karley, we were speaking earlier about how emotions can live in the body and create inflammation or lead to illness, and how it's never to the place of victim shaming or blaming and saying it's that you're responsible for your illness. But I feel like this is something that medicine is catching up with, is the fusion of how our emotional state affects our physical well-being and how physical traumas can be held in the body for so long and can co-create, maybe not cause illness, but certainly don't make it better. And I was wondering, as an MD, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the question. As a naturopathic doctor, I can definitely say that I see the effects of people's emotional states in their bodies every day. And the science, like you said, has slowly caught up to how that looks. But now we know that, 90% of your serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that's sort of your feel-good neurotransmitter in your brain, is made in the gut. Right? So if we're constantly in something like a sympathetic dominance in our nervous system, so fight or flight, if we're nervous and anxious and we're having those types of emotions, or we're in fear, then we're not going to be relaxed enough to have a healthy gut. And without, the nice peristalsis waves going through and regular bowel movements and lots of fiber moving through and doing all of the beautiful stuff and the proper secretions that are happening in our gut when we're in parasympathetic, then we're not going to be building any of that serotonin. And then, that serotonin is not going to be bathing our brain in feel-good hormones. Instead, we'll be jacked up on, the adrenal hormones of cortisol, adrenaline, epinephrine, that sort of thing. And we also know how all of those different neurotransmitters interact with each other. So, depleting dopamine, which is kind of our motivation or our reward system, or when we're on our phones all night because we're anxious and we're scrolling or we're looking at social media and we're getting a flood of dopamine, then our body is chemically responding. So I think, the science has caught up or is catching up with a big part of the physiology responding to our emotions. But I think I'd also like to speak to the idea that we've really become myopic with a lot of this as well, right? So a lot of the times the spiritual and the emotional experience gets dismissed by the myopic view of science. And so science, you would like to be able to explain everything. And trust me, I am a scientist at heart. And so I'd love to be able to draw all the pathways and explain everything that's happening in your physiology. But I wouldn't be here chatting with you if I didn't believe that there was more to the way that our body responds. And I think that science has not caught up with that part yet. But we have practitioners and healers and other modalities like homeopathy, which is ancient, like Chinese medicine, which is thousands of years old, that do recognize that influence, the influence of the psyche and the emotional body and the subtle body. And, there's points in Chinese medicine that help to move qi and lower heart fire. So you're, all the mental work that's going on. And you say that to a Western physician and they have no idea what you're talking about. But I natter on about neurotransmitters and yippity-dee, all the stuff that's on the biohacking forums and everything else, and everyone's happy to buy the next nootropic that's going to change that for them, right? So I think the conversation is, yes, we can explain some of it in science or through science, but ultimately I still really feel like we know very little about how the emotional state really, really actually impacts all the layers of our being.
Well, if we're not in a parasympathetic nervous state, there can't be healing, right? It doesn't the body need that to heal?
It's the most optimal state for it to heal. But I can also say that the human body is resilient. And it will survive. It will try its darndest to survive at the cost of other systems within our body and all sorts of stuff. But I wouldn't say it's as black and white as you need to be in parasympathetic to heal, but you'll heal a lot faster, and it's the optimal state for us to heal in. So it's tricky though, because I see what we would call miracles every day, and you wonder, how the heck is she still walking? Things like that. It doesn't make sense. So I can't say that I have the answer.
Right. And that's where the numinous, the ineffable, makes its way into this conversation. And that's what has tried to be distilled out for so long. But I truly believe magic is just science that hasn't been discovered yet. We're living through times that are very scary and stressful. The news is very scary. What's happening in the world is very scary. And I know every generation has their own version of what was scary at what time. But what herbs or practices could you recommend for our listeners to help facilitate a more calm and grounded nervous system or sense of self while the world is chaotic outside?
Yeah, I mean, I as a constitutional practitioner, I always like to match the person and the herb. So I think one that comes to mind, just because I'm writing an article on it, is blue vervain, Verbena hastata. And it's also just poking up in my garden. And it's for that, it's for that person who rushes through life anxious, afraid, panicked. They push themselves. They may not listen to their inner compass. They may not have that connection to their body. They may live kind of neck upward, like neck up, and they can be very, very critical, hypercritical of others and of themselves. And kind of that adrenally driven person. They thrive off of adrenaline and lots to do, and they work hard, play hard. And at the same time, yeah,
That's
at the
me.
same, yeah, a lot of people.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing that kind of comes back to your conversation around the divine feminine and the feminine principle is female bodies don't thrive like men can thrive living in that kind of state.
Yep.
And so what verbena or vervain, blue vervain, is also helpful for is the thyroid, metabolic function, improving sleep, improving even fertility. It can balance a lot of hormonal disruption. So herbs are not gender specific. And yet I will say that blue vervain does have more of an affinity for the woman who's doing all those things and then suffers from chronic neck and back pain or migraines or headaches. It's a very specific herb, even in a very medical approach to herbalism. You use blue vervain for people who have chronic neck and back pain and migraines and headaches. And then, of course, all kinds of hepatic or liver conditions as well. But on the energetic level, and specifically for women who are struggling operating in this very patriarchal, male-dominated society, as you say, the 24-hour clock. I was just listening to a podcast by this man who's like, I aim to sleep 4 hours a night, and I go to the gym at midnight. And I'm thinking,
Oh my goodness.
Of course you do. But no woman could survive that. He can do that probably for many years until it perhaps catches up on him. But I have many patients who have tried that, female patients who have tried that, and it just doesn't work. The body, it won't work. So blue vervain, when I give that herb to someone, I'll sometimes do it in clinic, in office. If a woman comes to me and she's frantic and angry and frustrated and talking a million miles an hour and panicking, maybe even having a panic attack because she has so much work and she has kids and she's doing her master's degree, writing her papers at night, and then making the kids lunch at 11 o'clock or midnight, I'll give a few drops even in office. And the first thing you'll notice, a deep breath.
Yeah.
And then a pause, which is so important. And then she might cry. There may be a release. It's a beautiful herb. And I think one that I hope every listener checks out.
I will definitely check that out. And I love the idea, speaking to you two today, when we hear about biohacking, it's so masculine. And that's exactly what that story reminded me of like, I just, take this supplement, then work out for 3 hours, then have my coffee with this fat thing stirred into it and whatever they're doing out there. I don't know. But I love the idea of biohacking for women, like our energy points that we can support every day, because too often women or people who menstruate are putting themselves into these boxes made for men and trying to fit it. So what's a box for us? What is a biohacking tip for us that the listeners could benefit from?
Okay, full disclosure, I helped open a biohacking facility. So
I know, I read your bio. That's why I came up with these questions.
So full disclosure, guilty of the fire and the masculine way. But
you're an Aries. I can't blame anything for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm an Aries rising, so I get sucked into it too, so don't worry.
Okay, good. So it's really interesting though, because I would say that whether it's because it's Canadian and it's not an American company or what, but that clinic, which I'm no longer a part of, does it so well for women. And they are really looking at the way to support women through a lot of the hormonal transitions and various things like that. And so there is a way to be looking at the minutia for women in a very different lens than the way that you would look at that for men. And the biggest thing I think is, as long as the biggest goal in biohacking is not to like live forever or whatever, but is to prevent suffering. That's the way that, you know, how I really became invested and involved in it, is to prevent suffering, which means to, in biohacking speak, to improve your health span. So improve how you're going to feel better or feel in your boots for longer. And so I think, you know, if we had the conversation amongst the three of us today of like, how can we keep you feeling like you're in your boots longer or more often? You know, it sort of changes the language rather than how can we optimize your performance, right? It changes the language, because I would love to have certain hacks or tips or tools or reminders or nudges as to how to stay in my boots and, you know, in that way more often, how to keep a healthy body. And funny enough, I think for women, which is a large part of the reason why Seraphina and I put together our program, it's an education piece. It's having these conversations like we are with you today, Taylor. And then in our program, you know, all I teach about is teaching women about how their bodies work. So biohacking for women, in my opinion, is largely based around feminine education. And so the education and teaching you about your body, so you know when you're at, like what Seraphina was saying, when you can catch it early, you know what's actually going on, you know what your physiology is saying when X, Y, and Z is happening monthly. Or, you know, I remember when we were taught the first cohort of our program, women were absolutely floored, and our forum almost blew up to find out that they are 5 times more at risk of having cardiovascular disease than breast cancer. And so women, you know, they're so terrified of breast cancer, but in reality, more of us are going to develop cardiovascular disease than ever breast cancer. And women saying, okay, maybe I actually do want to make an appointment with my physician and, you know, take my cholesterol seriously and, you know, look at these things. So for me, I really do believe education from a feminine perspective that involves the whole woman and sort of the heroine's journey, that feminine sort of journey that we go on, and respects all parts of ourselves, not just physical parts, but, you know, our emotional parts, our hearts, our spiritual parts, our yearnings. I think that is the biggest biohack that's available for women.
I love that, because I feel like the female experience is a holistic one. We're not really able to compartmentalize, even emotionally or mentally, the same way men can. My husband's like, I'm just not going to be upset about that right now. And he just like goes on with his day. And I'm like, I can't think about anything but that. I have to sit with this. I have to journal on it. I have to pull cards about it. So it makes sense that the fully healthy, integrative female approach can never be the same as compartmentalizing in a masculine way. It would have to be the education, the holistic approach, and that makes perfect sense. So I'm a bit of a medical intuitive. I never diagnose things. I always say go see a doctor, but I do get hits about things, and I do get messages, and I send people to get checked out if I see something like that. I'm very highly clairsentient, and I feel people's bodies like they're my body. Something I feel in 99% of my clients is clenching their jaw. That seems like just this universal thing. I clench my jaw as well. Almost every woman I talk to clenches their jaw, and I know we hold so much stress there, and intuitively it's that feeling of feeling out of control and kind of clenching down. It's all in the jaw. I'm wondering if there's anything you recommend for when you notice you're in this place where your body's holding all this tension and your head is up in your to-do list, but your body is getting your attention with all of this tension, especially in the jaw, the neck and the shoulders. Is there anything you can recommend for somebody that finds themselves in that state?
I mean, from a herbal perspective, you did just describe blue vervain, just to bring it back to that.
Yeah.
And it is, again, both in homeopathy and in some Western herbs, the kind of classic constitution who does clench their jaw. There can be also repressed anger. And so working on those relaxing nervines, which vervain is, it smooths that liver chi. So it's an opportunity to look at, what aren't you saying? What do you want to say that you're not letting yourself say? What is your anger that you may be holding back, wanting to express? Or unmet needs, or as you say, the control mechanisms that so many of us have. But all of that, again, 5 drops of blue vervain, just try it.
Yes. And is that a tincture?
Yeah, that's a tincture.
Okay, amazing. I love that. And what about teas? Are they potent enough? Can they really make a difference? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both of us are wide-eyed nodding.
Yes. Okay, because I love tea and I'm such a tea drinker, but I'm like, is this really powerful? Okay.
It all depends on the quality of your herbs. So make sure that they have that you can smell them. They have some color and vitality to them. They're bitter, but bitter is the most dominant flavor in nature, and most of us modern people suffer from bitter deficit disorder. We need more bitter in our diets because it has so many benefits, including relaxing the inflamed, congested, stagnant tissue in our bodies, in the modern body. So teas are definitely potent enough, and it's all in the quality of your herbs. And then just steep them a little longer, like steep them a good 15 minutes. I mean, I make things very strong, but 15 minutes, steep your tea really, really well. 1 heaping tablespoon to 1 cup is usually a good dose of most herbs.
I love that. That's such good advice. Thank you. Again, women have been sanitized out of medical school and everything like that. And so there have been so many myths about our bodies and aging, and women are so dismissed by doctors often when we give our symptoms. There's just so many ways that we have been harmed by this dismissal in the medical field. And it's starting to catch up now with amazing healers like you. One of the biggest ways that this has impacted us is our fear of aging, the misconceptions around aging. Again, we feel like to be in a female body is to be accepting of chaos and discomfort. Seraphina, I heard you on a live talking about that it's not always maiden mother crone, but maiden mother queen crone. And crone is a word that, different people use different things. I like to say wise one. But I feel like crone is a little too patriarchal PR, as I like to say. So can you talk a little bit about maybe dispelling a myth about when it comes to our aging process, or a little bit about that queen phase that comes after mother and before wise woman?
Yeah. So I want to credit some of my teachers and people in my life that are much older than me and women I admire. So one of those friends of mine, her name is Ruby Berry, and she's 75, and she said, wait a minute, like, don't call me a crone. Like, I get to decide when I'm done that phase. And that really struck me. And maybe it connects to what you're saying around like the patriarchal PR. I love that we get to decide, not the culture. The culture doesn't get to decide when we finish being a maiden or when we become a mother or no longer are a mother. Like, who gets to decide that but the woman herself? I've heard a lot of my patients say that when they hit menopause, their children are also leaving the nest. And there's this incredible death that isn't spoken about for those women who do have children, where those can sometimes, not for everyone, but happen at the same time. And what I began to see in my patients is they weren't done life yet. When they hit menopause and then their kids they're in their early 50s, late 40s, their kids might be older, going on to university or beyond. And they're like, okay, I'm now moving into menopause. I'm no longer a mother. What now? I become this like old wizened crone and just disappear. or live in my hovel in the woods and that's it. Like I have no more contribution to society. And that's where what I actually began to see are women at that age and stage. And for every woman, it is different. She moved into this like almost second adolescence. Not that she became a kid, but a new power arose, new hobbies, a different identity, became more opinionated, excited. Some even started another business, or for the first time, I have a patient who went to medical school at 50. She started medical school.
I love that.
At 50. So there's this age and this chapter in life that I don't think is given enough attention. I'm not there yet, but it happens to be the population that Karley and I serve. I would say the most is women in that age and that range. And it's an invigorating, exciting time. So I wish I could credit the author who I first saw name that phase. It might have been Christian Northrup, Maiden, Mother, Queen, and then Crone. And that Queen phase is about women coming to me and whispering and saying, hey, Seraphina, I'm postmenopausal, but I actually have quite a libido. Like no one warned me that the libido can come back. Nobody warned me that I had this new sense of excitement and my emotions are now steady because I don't have my monthly period anymore. So that's the Queen stage. It's the I don't give a fuck what anyone else thinks.
Yes.
I may have another creative outlet and another second adolescence or second adulthood. And there's an excitement because there's more confidence in women as we age. I mean, when I turned 40, I felt like the confidence switch just got turned on and dialed up. It was such an exciting age. And so, I think discussions about that phase are so important. And you don't just die. It's not that you become this old, you know, unfortunate woman. And not that a crone or a wise one is that either. That's not at all what I'm saying. That's just a different phase of life.
There's a couple of things I want to say about that. I love that so much. First of all, I'm so lucky to have had a mom who modeled this positivity about aging to me. She always told me every decade gets better and better and better. That's what she always told me. But it's interesting because that view of the maiden, mother, crone couldn't be more through the male lens with the name crone. It's like, you're useful to me as a maiden. I find you attractive and I want to mate with you. You're useful to me as a mother because you're birthing workers for capitalism. Oh, you're a crone now. It's like, okay, how more obvious could that be that is not... Anyway, and to this concept of second adolescence, that's tied astrologically to the archetype of Aquarius. You're born in Aries, you're a new soul, you go through the journey, and by the time you get to Aquarius, you know all the rules, so you can decide for yourself which ones you want to stick to and which ones actually aren't really it. So I love that you're an Aquarius rising speaking to this because you're here to be a change maker and to see which rules make sense and which don't. And I find that very synchronistic, and it makes me happy. I wanted to ask more about your workshop that's coming up, your course more accurately. It's deeper than a workshop. And again, there is no real quick fix for health for women. It's such a holistic situation that is mind, body, soul. And something that I love about you two is that you're not sanitizing the magic out of it. You're not trying to just have it fit a mold that dissects a central part of our spiritual limbs. So can you speak a little bit about this? Because so many people feel like they're at war with their bodies. They don't know how to love their bodies properly, and they're very overwhelmed with where to start their healing journey. So I would love for you to share more about this beautiful offering that you're sharing in the world.
We do all of our teaching through the lens of myth. So we try to anchor it in story and in myth, and that's really an area that Seraphina takes on and sort of shares so that women can see themselves and women know that they're not alone and they realize these things have been happening for all of time. And we can probably let Seraphina speak to that as well as the last piece, which will be ritual. But we teach through the lens of myth, and then we also teach through the lens of modern science because we can't ignore modern science. And so we can't just, go into la la land and pretend that our physical bodies don't exist and that we don't have this beautiful temple to take care of. And so that's really where I contribute to the way that we teach. And I really share about the most modern medical science through that feminine lens and through, teaching about our own bodies. And we do that through guided visualizations so that you're really experiencing and sensing your body, and even things like your vulva or your liver or your esophagus all the way down to your anus with digestion. We really get in there and we do it in that feminine way, that embodied way. We're not about leaving our bodies. We're about getting more into our bodies and being more grounded and having more education so that, we can show up in our doctor's office and advocate for ourselves. And then another arm of our program is obviously plant medicine and herbal medicine. And so we teach about plants and about herbs that are great allies for women, and when and how to use them. And then we teach about medicine making, and so we teach people how to make remedies in your own kitchen, things that are accessible and that are going to shift various parts of the way our physiology works, mentally, emotionally. Like Seraphina just shared with you about blue vervain, we would teach about how to make a tincture, or how to be making a tea, or however that medicine's going to be best taken. And then Seraphina, maybe I'll let you add to what I've shared and close with ritual.
What I love about the program, what excites me, is it's held in the container of the heroine's journey and through the arc and the lens of ancient myths and fairy tales. So for example, we open module 1 the first week. Every week you get a new module over 2 months. So it's a 2-month program. And module 1, week 1, is we take you through the myth of Persephone and Demeter, which, if you know that story, is about the maiden who goes into the underworld, and for that 6 months she's in the underworld. All the flowers and the earthly delights die because her mother, who's on Earthside, is grieving for her daughter. And that story, in one respect, like all myths are powerful metaphors. And that story is a metaphor, you could say, for the cycle of the year, where equinox to equinox, we're either in the underworld, in the darker half of the year, or the upper world, the light half of the year, the joyful part of the year. But so Persephone holds the container for module 1. And then inside that container, inside module 1, we have Karley bringing us through incredible lessons to understand your own cycles and seasons in your body, not just for menstruating women, but also for perimenopausal and menopausal women. And then we're also introducing you to one of the most important herbs to the ancient Greeks that literally used this herb, chaste tree berry, in those ancient rituals where they enacted the story of Persephone and Demeter that actually happened thousands of years ago. So that's also that's all woven in module 1. And then we conclude the weekly lessons with a ritual as a way to embody and anchor the teachings, as Karley said, in the body, and also to speak to the sacred order of things through myth and ritual. Because ritual is one way that we can be in conversation with the unseen, the numinous, the ineffable. It's one way that we can be in conversation with that sacred weaver that we can't see, but we feel the effects of every day. And so ritual is one way to communicate to that. I think about it as a way to communicate to the soul of the world. And ritual, beautiful. Yeah, and ritual also allows our soul to catch up to things that we can't quite fully intellectualize. So I think there's a lot of value in that, and people are hungry for ritual because that human beings are made to be in that kind of container, out of the head and into the body and into communicating with the soul of the world.
I love that. And it seems like ritual opens up a space for something greater than. Whereas routine or going through the motions of healing, that's all well and good, but ritual opens it up to that extra slice of something that wants to come in and co-create with us on a soul level in our healing. So that's so beautiful. I just want to ask one last question. So by the time this episode comes out, we're in the spring. It's Taurus season. It's Seraphina's time. And would you say that corresponds with, for those who menstruate, our follicular cycle? Is that kind of the same, like equal to the spring?
Yeah, I think so. Yep, I think so. And Taurus in particular is the heart of the season, right? It's the heart of spring. So I think I would, just pre-ovulatory. Yeah. I think that's one way to look at it.
Okay, great. So this collective follicular season, for those who have had menopause, don't bleed anymore, they sync up with what nature and the elements are doing, so they're still on a cycle. So what would you recommend for all of us who are synced up with nature right now to celebrate this follicularly, whatever that word will be?
Yeah, well, what you're making me think about is the pagan holiday Beltane, which happens on May 1st. It's a cross-quarter holiday. I just wrote about it today on Instagram. And
May Day.
Yeah, May Day. And historically, it was the time where the May Queen, so here we have that word queen, the May Queen would be receiving her consort, the Green Man, as a way to celebrate fertility. So fertility doesn't just mean procreation, but like you said, if we're going to celebrate that follicular season, and all of us here, regardless of what phase of life we're in, this is the time to celebrate life. And that's one way. Again, ritual, one of its values is it allows us to partner with the earth. And the more we partner with the earth, the more we partner with its seasons and cycles, the healthier we will be, because we're engaging that vital force. We're engaging that invisible energy that animates all things. And when we engage with that, we're enhancing our mind, our health on the mental level, emotional, and then spiritual, physical as well. So I would say for everyone to get out and celebrate the fertility of life in this season of Taurus, and to be celebrating everything that you can. Increase your level of joy, and then take in the beauty that nature has to offer us at this time of year, because that will allow us to have a healthier summer season, and that will then allow us to have a healthier autumn as well. Because in pagan traditions, we work with the wheel of the year. And so you're always looking at what's across the wheel from where you are today.
No, I love that so much, and it's been so great to have you on. And I truly believe just getting off of our screens and getting into nature is one of the most healing things we can do. And I love the idea that nature holds every answer that we're looking for in terms of our health, our body, how we can move forward with the most grace and alignment. It's all in nature. And May Day, Beltane, our follicular phase collectively couldn't be a more aligned time to get outside and smell the flowers, literally. So thank you so much for being on Magic Hour today. I know that this conversation will help a lot of people, and I know that your course will help a lot of people who feel a little lost or overwhelmed, or like doctors aren't listening to them, or their symptoms are being dismissed. And I know that's a true epidemic with women in the healthcare industry. Where can our listeners find you? Where can we find more of you? And I know for your course, we do have a code Magic Hour for 5% off as well. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks. You can find us centerforsacredarts.com. That's our website. And you can also find us on Instagram. You can check me out at seraphina.capranos, and you'll see all the links to the courses, to the program there as well.
Beautiful. And Dr. Karley, where can they find you?
I don't actually have an Instagram presence.
That's a flex. That's a flex.
So, I mean, we rely on Seraphina's account really for most of our postings around the program.
Okay.
And then the same thing, the Center for Sacred Arts, it has all of our educational materials and programs and offerings there. And one of the best ways actually to keep in touch, because we are always doing something like these webinars that's coming up at the end of the month, is to join the newsletter. So that's an option on the Center for Sacred Arts website. And in the newsletter, it's updates about different things that we're offering, updates about other people's work that we're just amazed by. We love to elevate, the wise women in our lives, and we love to elevate the voices of other women. So the newsletters are usually full of that, and usually recipes that are seasonally appropriate, and things like Seraphina's writing, sharing about her thoughts on blue vervain today. That's where you'll find all of that magic, is in our newsletter.
I really can't wait to try blue vervain. You guys are really hyping it up.
I can see the bottle right here, Taylor, because I'm in my clinic, and I can see the bottle right on the edge of my shelf. And I thought, oh wow, Seraphina and I didn't even talk about that she was going to mention that.
I love that. As a last little thing, do you guys recommend any source of herbs or tinctures? Do you make your own? Do you recommend a good source for people?
Yeah, I make a lot of my own tinctures. For most of your listeners are probably in the United States. And so there's a couple good companies. One of them is mountainroseherbs.com. You can check them out. They sell everything that you would ever want. And in terms of brands that you'll find at a health food store. I think in the United States, Gaia Herbs is, in my opinion, one of the best. And then another one is The Alchemist and the Herbalist. That's owned by David Winston. And he has an incredible, incredible company.
Amazing.
And I would say I just did a big order actually from Star West, which is a beautiful company. And I'm actually sad that they're changing their labels. They've sort of like cleaned up their labels. It was more of a goddess type label before, but sorry, Star West, if you're listening, I like the old labels better. But they have beautiful, high quality products. And then Natura is another one. It's a Donnie Yance, a clinical medical herbalist. His products, Natura, are unbeatable.
Yeah, that's true.
Awesome.
He's brilliant, like David Winston. So,
okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I know this is going to expand people's mind to what's possible, and it's not normal, or maybe not normal, but you don't have to suffer in your physical body. There are answers. Optimal health is available. It's not just a myth. And I hope that this conversation takes you in a step in the right direction. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.
Welcome, everyone, to Sitting with Spirit. So for those of you that are new to the podcast, take what resonates with you. I always say resonance is one of our strongest tools in our spiritual toolbox. And when something is that full heart yes, or I know I needed to hear that, that's how you know the message is for you. When it's a podcast format and many people are listening, not everything will be for you, and that's okay. Use it as an exercise in spiritual discernment for yourself. And that being said, at the end of every episode, I give a message from Spirit, from our guides, from our angels that most want to come through. And it was pretty funny because earlier this morning, I met with my mediumship circle, and I had two spirits come through. The first spirit, we could identify his broken right leg and the age he passed, and it made sense. It was somebody's dad and everything made sense. The second spirit that came through, nobody could take her information. They could resonate with the message that she gave, but they couldn't take her information. And what just became clear to me was that she came through a little early, but she was meant to be shared on this podcast recording today, not the mediumship circle. She just used that opportunity to come through. So I'm going to share her information now. And if it resonates with you, please take it. The main thing that this woman communicated to me was that she loved the water. Her happy place was the ocean with a drink in her hand, sitting on a chair with a little umbrella. Like, she was a water beach person. She loved baths. I just feel such a deep connection to the water with her. And she felt like a fun time. She felt like she had a fun personality. And she showed me this like mermaid tail. So I don't know if she loved mermaids. I don't know, but there was something there of just being a water, like being a fish, just being so into the water. I also was seeing the initial A around her. So she could have, an A first name or last name, something with an A. And I saw her wearing a purple dress. I saw her holding a microphone, and that gave me the feeling that either she was a good speaker or a singer, or maybe just had a loud voice. But there is something there with her holding a microphone as well. And I just got this young at heart feeling. And she showed me that at the end, she had pressure on her chest and her pain on her chest. I also felt a little bit of thyroid stuff lighting up. And then I also felt memory loss, the feeling I got from memory loss. And so I felt like she passed 50s or 60s, maybe younger than we would typically call old age. Of course, that is young. So that being said, it's less about her details and more about the message that she wants to share. And her message is, do not wait to have fun. I know that there is a lot going on energetically as of this recording. It's almost the Scorpio full moon, which is a very intense time. So do not wait to have fun. I know life can get crazy. I know things can trigger us. I know we can sometimes delay our gratification to when our wounds say we're worthy of joy and pleasure, but you're worthy right now, and do not wait to have fun. And so what this spirit was telling me was there was something there with wishing that she spent more time in the water, wishing she spent more time in her happy place. And so there's something here coming through of not waiting, not delaying your gratification to the point where you're not living the life you want to live. And if you are in an environment or around people that are constantly triggering your life experience to triggering you in a way that makes your life not as enjoyable. Of course, we can't avoid the lessons and the work, and that's not the message here. But to a certain extent, we are in control of our environment, of our boundaries, who we allow in, what we co-create with in our head. So don't forget to have fun. We focus so much on the healing and the shadow work, but the point of all of that is so that we can enjoy our life. And here we are in Taurus season. I believe it will be Taurus season when this comes out. And this is the time to enjoy our life, to come back down to our body, which is very synchronistic with everything that we spoke about on this episode. And with her, I was also hearing the name like Amy or Jamie, like something with an E on the end. I'm not sure if that would have been her name or the person she was trying to connect with. So just keep all of that in mind. And if you can take some of that, know it's a little wink and a postcard from your loved ones in spirit as well. One of the images that I got while I was sitting in the power was a dam breaking. And it turned into this beautiful waterfall. It was like a dam breaking, turning into a beautiful waterfall. And I feel like it piggybacks on this water element feeling I got from this woman in spirit who just seems so fun. I do feel like she might have had a problem with sunburns because I just keep seeing her outside in the sun by the water. And so with this dam breaking, it can be scary to let the dam break, but it's essentially necessary for us to let go, let it out, let it all out so that it can be released and flow. And sometimes when we're really scared of the change, the healing, the emotional reaction, the fallout of the change we're calling in, we can unintentionally build a dam up that keeps us in a place of feeling stagnant and flustered energetically and emotionally. So there's also something here of letting the dam burst open, letting yourself feel everything, letting yourself confront whatever you've been hiding behind the dam so that you can more fully enjoy your life. I also saw a wedding ring or an engagement ring as a symbol. And with that, I got this feeling or message of re-examining commitments. What are we promising ourselves to? What are we co-creating with? And what are you committed to in this life? And I feel like sometimes people on this path or in this spiritual awareness, we do the healing, we do the work, but are we committed to actually joy, pleasure? Do we allow ourselves to fully embody that? And so are you committed to always finding a new thing to heal, or are you committed to actually living your most joyful life? And that can include both at the same time. I'm not saying it has to be either or, but it's just a time to consciously reflect on what you're co-creating with, what you're committed to, and if it's still an energetic contract that you want to be a part of, or if you want to commit to something that is more in alignment now. One of the last things I got was a warning to watch the way your thoughts drift to the worst case scenario. Of course, we know when our thoughts drift to the worst case scenario that that's not our intuition, that is our mind trying to keep us safe. But there's something here of, and this was kind of floating around with the dam bursting, There's a lot of Chiron energy right now. There's a lot of Plutonian energy right now. And these are heavy hitters. Chiron is our inner wound that we heal so that we can then heal the world. And it's very applicable to Seraphina and Karley's episode today. Chiron is the sign of the healer, the asteroid connected to healing. And then Pluto is death, rebirth, shadow, looking at everything from the deepest root level up. And they're both really active right now. And by the time this comes out, we'll still be in the integration period of that. And so this is drifting sometimes through the underworld to confronting our deepest fears, to the dam bursting, through this alchemical process of death and rebirth and healing. And I know that the first message was have fun and enjoy your life. Don't wait to enjoy your life. But everything in the human experience exists as part of a polarity. And on the polarity of enjoying your full life, the opposite end of that is healing the shadows that would try to pull puppet strings and keep you small. So both feed the other on that polarity. And that feels like a very lit up part of our consciousness right now is the death and the rebirth, so we can have that most abundant, joyful, and free experience. So if you feel energetically overwhelmed by that feeling of the dam breaking, by the intense emotions, by the depths that are coming up right now, put yourself in an environment that is conducive to joy, to the best of your ability, because we can't control everything in life, of course, but whatever is in your control that you know will help you or bring you back to a place where you feel a little bit more stable or grounded in your authentic self, do that for yourself. Give yourself that gift, because I feel a lot of people right now going down, co-creating and committed to fearful narratives, whether that's what the news is saying, whether that's what your past wounds are saying, whatever it is, whether it's Chiron and Aries telling you if it doesn't happen now, it will never happen. Examine it all and ultimately come back to that beautiful spirit who loved to just sit on the beach and have a drink and look at the ocean and get in the ocean. And just remember, nature heals, and don't wait to do the things that you really want to do with your life that will bring you joy to the best of your ability, because the time is now. Much love, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of your week. And remember that life is too short not to be magical.
If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. Taylor will answer one question at the top of each episode. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful community of magical people? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Paige. The first angel reading giveaway will happen when we hit 55 5-star reviews. For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Paige. Remember, you are magic.